Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Dave Neal here, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. In this video, we're going to discuss a little bit about inner child therapy and how it's explained, what it means. What I love about the show, The Bachelorette, The Bachelor, is that sometimes we learn a lot from toxic fights that happen on the show, what to avoid, triggers, things like that. But then we also learn from conversations like this one that happened between Jason and Gabby. And I got to tell you, no one's more surprised than me to see that Jason's done so much work on himself. As we know, Lace back in the day, years ago, was doing work on herself. And it's important that that's what we do. Follow me on Instagram at DNeals. I'm live on Patreon if you want to check out the behind the scenes of this interview here, patreon.com/Dave Neal. So this full clip is available. I'll post a link below. Gabby and Jason share their mental health journeys, but it's always good to talk mental health. It's always good to talk about deburdening from all of our past traumas and our triggers and finding out why we're defensive. Here's a quick clip from this conversation that now is available on YouTube.
An adult, through therapy, I've figured out to speak up for what I want, and it's helped with everything in my life, from work, friends, relationships, everything.
So there it is, work, friends, relationships, just learning to speak up for yourself, learning to understand why you feel a certain way. So Jason mentions to Gabby, hey, have you heard of inner child therapy before? And look, this might not be the sexiest conversation to have, but when you're pursuing a partner, to be on some sort of similar path, journey, enlightenment, and having a similar thirst for understanding and bettering who you are, the version of yourself, always a good thing here. So here they are talking about inner child therapy.
With dating, and I have a lot of fears, honestly.
Have you ever heard of inner child work?
Yeah, to reparent yourself and
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's changed my life.
It's really rare to meet a man who appreciates therapy.
Yeah.
Wow, so Gabby's into it. She's into it. She's like, oh boy, this is rare. Oh, she's like, this feels kind of nice to hear that we're on the same page, especially if she's growing up with parents that just don't understand. Our parents are always trying the best with the information they had. They necessarily weren't parented in the best way, and a lot of times it's do as I say while you live under my household, and it's how does that really work out for you? You know what I mean? You just move away when you turn 18 and never want to see them at Thanksgiving. Not projecting from me. I love my family, but the point is, shining light on dark places is a good thing to do. I'm so blessed with our community here to have been put in touch with some amazing mental health experts. So joining me for a quick interview is certified clinical trauma professional and friend of our channel. Everybody say hello to Franny. All right, so excited today to talk to our good friend Franny. How are you, Franny?
I'm good. How are you, Dave?
Good to see you. I know you're a big hiker, and are you recovering from a rolled ankle, broken ankle? What went down with you?
Well, yeah, I sprained my ankle this year, so I had to take some time off. And I also hurt my knee this year, so now I'm a little bit slower in my hikes. But
you're back doing the hikes just at a slower pace now.
Oh. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Let me ask you this. Have you had to readjust how you deal with your own mental stability while recovering? What was the hiking the outlet that was then taken away from you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, hiking is a big thing for me. It's my time, it's my self-care. So when I'm not hiking, when I have to stop, it's so hard. I have to find other outlets and other ways of dealing with my emotions. So yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Your physical health interferes with your mental health for sure.
Oh yeah. Now, are you good at knowing when you need the time, or is it a reactionary thing? Because a lot of people go, "Oh, Dave, we talk a lot about mental health and all these things," and then I find myself all of a sudden being frazzled, and I'm I'm not even taking care of myself. I'm coming off an a-hole on my channel because I'm burning the candle at both ends of the wick here.
Yes, sometimes, for the most part, I am good. But yeah, there are times that I get overwhelmed and that, I get burned out, especially with the demand for mental health services nowadays. And I want, it is in my nature to want to help. So yeah, sometimes it's hard to see when it's time to take a break.
Yeah, like finding the time to make sure you're in the right space because yeah, that's what you do. You give your heart and energy to help others. Now, it's interesting this community of mental health experts we have within our YouTube channel because I think we're at like 5 or 6. Every time I mention a new person pops along, oh my gosh, I'm getting my degree tomorrow, and all these other people. So we're gonna have to form this little sort of Avengers group of mental health experts here because I really enjoy talking to you guys. Now you had mentioned, I think through when we were DMing that, well, let's put it this way. There was a conversation this week between Gabby and Jason. The one thing we love about The Bachelor, Bachelorette is that we get to watch conversations play out. Sometimes they're not good conversations. They're not healthy. They're toxic fights and this and that. And sometimes it's people that have come together and have done the work. They talked a lot about their inner child work. So Gabby always talks about she kind of like plays herself off to be like sort of this unrefined person, but she's done a lot of work with therapy and finding out who she is and recovering. So I guess today we can discuss inner child work and overcoming whatever it is on the inside that are imprints from growing up that have caused us, whatever pain that we still hold on to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a very interesting conversation that they had. And of course, we just watched a small part of it. But it is so important to validate these experiences that we have, not only growing up, but anytime that there is a traumatic event in our life. And when I talk about trauma, it's not only the big T traumas, like not abuse or accidents or things like that, but also the little T traumas, which are the developmental traumas. We all have been through trauma. So everybody can benefit from doing this inner child work.
Yeah, is it
Like even
easier?
things like,
I'm sorry. Is it easier? Like, is it? I would say, is it more of a challenge to think of the little traumas? Because it's one thing to say, "Oh my gosh, my mom died when I was 7." I'm whatever. But it's another if you're bullied or maybe have some sort of passive aggressive way your family communicates with you. Like as a mental health, you're a certified clinical trauma professional, and as a professional, what jumps out at you when it comes to seeing these red flags that people can work on?
um, well, this is the thing. Sometimes it's hard to detect that, but every time that we have a strong reaction to something that we can't explain, it's because it is because of some traumatic experience that we've had in our life. Because every time that there is trauma, there's something in us just changes. There is a part of us that changed and that says, you know what, this is never going to happen again. So you become that quote unquote defensive person in some areas of your life, or you have a very strong emotional reaction to something that doesn't seem like to be like this big deal. So one of the things that it's important to do and that I like to do is to get like a really good life history of my clients. So I can try to detect where the traumatic events were, and then we can start working with that.
Yeah, I find this actually to relate to stand-up comedy. A lot of times we, as comics, we don't realize what's so funny about our life when we're like, oh yeah, my dad left my mom and had married someone. The more you talk about certain things, you go, oh, wow, that's a little unique, or oh, I'm making light of certain things, but you kind of expose the triggers that exist through just unearthing through conversation. So with comics, I think we naturally do like sort of therapy on stage. Now, don't get me wrong, we can all use therapy with professionals, but we start to talk things out and realize what's not normal and and we can sort of be like, oh yeah, that's right. And with me and my fiance Tasha, whom you know, we sort of shine this. We kind of look in the mirror with each other and we swap notes on the way we were raised. And there's ways that she was raised that would not be healthy. And same with me, where like our parents just tried the best they could. And I think that like maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, what you mean when you say like when emotions come up, those are triggers that we need to say, all right, why am I feeling this way? Acknowledging, I don't know, like what can someone acknowledge within themselves if they're not in therapy in the moment? Is it the heart rate going up, just feeling stressed? And then what do they do to sort of capture that feeling so that they can later address it?
Well, it varies from person to person. One of the biggest things, as I said, is when we become defensive. on a situation that it wasn't necessarily an attack, because there's a huge difference between intention and perception. So the person is not trying to attack us, but we perceive it as an attack, and that's usually a traumatic response that we have. Something like, why am I feeling this way? And every time that we have an emotion, a strong emotional reaction, is because something really important was touched. So what is it that is so important? What is the emotion that is coming up for me? And where did that start? When was the first time that I felt that?
Yeah, and it's something that I am wildly defensive with certain things, and then other things people could really think they're getting to me, and it doesn't bother me at all. I always say this with Tasha, where there'll be times where she'll spill something. She spilled something on my shirt. She was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." And I'm like, I don't care at all. That doesn't matter to me. But then she'll do something that she doesn't understand would be so offensive to me, and it's something that I have to go, I know she's not trying. I know she's being constructive. I know she's being loving. But at the same time, I'm like, I can feel that rage come out, and it's like, look, we have to. I think it's important for everyone working on themselves. It's like, you don't want to push other people away, and you also don't want to not address your own burdens, because then I feel like you become bitter. Like, that's the codependent in me, right? I want to not say how I feel because I want to make everyone else happy, and then all I'm left with is just shoving it down my throat and feeling bitter and resentful. And then it's like, how am I servicing people with that sort of vibe, And I guess when we watch the show, we just get to see, and I know we can't really diagnose people from the show because it's so curated and edited, but we get to see where people are at that stage. So I know you can't possibly diagnose them. That wouldn't be ethical, but Rachel, to me, just seems like she's not as far along on the journey as Gabby with regards to the anger that she's feeling. And so, like, what would you say about, like, looking at the two, not to compare and say one's better or whatever, but how would you look at the two and where they're at with the way they've communicated so far in the season?
Well, it seems like Rachel has a harder time self-soothing, self-regulating. And because you can see that Gabby, sometimes she thinks before she says something. And she has that, oh yeah, I think that's her thinking and processing before she actually says something. And Rachel is more like in the moment she's going to say it. So I don't know much about Rachel's life or story or anything like that, but she might have some triggers that she's not even aware of. Things that happen that she's not even aware of. Or it could be but from like her previous experience with relationships, that she was talking about being a pilot and how, that was hard for her. So yeah, it seems like she has stronger emotional reactions than Gabby does.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. And I mean, look, that's how I watch the show. It's almost like we got to see an interesting science experiment with Clayton, where Clayton essentially broke up with Gabby and Rachel the exact same way. I mean, he literally talked to them in the same moment. So there's always a million variables, but they kind of did a good job of getting rid of some of those variables. And we saw Gabby sort of go like, she still told him off but she kind of like took the high road, and Rachel was like, these tears aren't for you, and all these things. And I don't mean that in any way to judge Rachel. I think feeling anger you should feel your feelings. I guess the question becomes, how do you, because to me, when you're feeling anger, you're like, if you have road rage, you're only hurting yourself. You're only getting your own blood pressure up. So what's the best way to overcome that anger feeling and get right to the recovery feeling?
That's a really good question. And that's something that I strongly believe in, that every part of us has good intention. So as I said, like trauma, every time there's trauma, there's a part of us that changes, right? So we develop this part of us that says it's never going to happen again. And that part has good intentions, has the intention to protect you from being re-traumatized or living that same experience again. So it's really important to recognize that and validate that anger or that strong emotional reaction before you move to what the real trigger was and what the real wound was. Now, a lot of people don't like to validate the anger because they know it's not doing anything for me. Well, actually it is. the more we try to avoid or suppress an emotion, the stronger it gets. It's like if we're talking to someone and then that person is trying to make a point and we are just not validating, the person is going to get louder and louder and louder. And that's what happens with anger. So the first thing is to accept it, understand it, show some self-compassion. Then you can get to the root of the problem, what's behind the anger, because anger is never in the driver's seat. There's always another emotion there, but anger is just a way, it's easier, quote unquote, easier to feel angry because anger puts you in a place of power than to make yourself vulnerable.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely. And I've said this when I talk about my relationship, which is the only real sort of like compass I can use. When Tasha and I will fight, I always find that I personally don't feel like I get that angry, but I feel like she does. And I kind of, it's almost nice to see like in the moment what makes someone upset versus with me, I might get angry hours or days later. Like I might try to put out the wildfire and then later on feel the fire from like where I didn't get the attention. So it's almost like harder for me to isolate what actually pissed me off because it's not necessarily sparking right away. So there is something to be said about like seeing those emotions. And I guess my next question would be this: in a relationship, because when with your parents, you love your family, you don't choose them, you kind of get over things. But with a relationship, at what point is it? I'll say this, we just covered the Jacqueline Trumbull. I don't know if you covered this story. She was getting married to her fiance and she broke it off 2 weeks beforehand during a fight. Now, clearly there was probably a ton of red flags, things we'll never know about. But at what point should couples not, should couples cut their losses versus continue to try to build towards understanding?
well, again, it's very particular to each couple. There is something that is really interesting about couples because I talked about self-regulating. There's also co-regulating. So couples that work well together, they have the ability to help their partner co-regulate. Now, if that's not happening, there's some certain ways that they can talk about it. And if it keeps not happening, they might not be compatible.
Interesting.
And I'm a big, go ahead.
No, it's just very interesting. So co-regulating is just the idea that you're acknowledging each other's sort of what's working and not working and trying to shine light on each other's problems. Is that right?
It's more helping your partner get to the root of the problem. Like there's anger. So what is it? What's going on? Holding space for your partner, talking to your partner, just trying to understand your partner. The same way that we try to understand ourselves, we should try to understand our partner. I like when you said it, you and Tasha, you talk about these things. You want to know where it's coming from. And that is so, so important to do. Now, a lot of couples don't do that because, again, there is a part of us that gets triggered in an argument or something like that. So instead of trying to understand what's going on with our partner, we are going to focus on our feelings at that point. And that's when couples need to start working together because vulnerability can connect people. But in a lot of instances, it disconnects them.
Yeah, that's so interesting to hear, like 9 years into my relationship, because I do think early on we had disagreements and things that we still kept on coming to the negotiation table because I think we both had the benefit that we were trying, but we were just like speaking different languages. My way of communicating probably triggered the hell out of her. And I've had to learn. It's like, look, like, again, I always relate this back to stand-up, but like if a joke's not working, find a new way to tell the joke because the audience isn't getting it. Either I'm talking too fast or I'm not addressing the punchline in a way, or it's just not a good joke, but figure it out because the communication is off. So there's no point in beating my chest and just, if my lady can't understand my point, turning the volume up. That's like, it's kind of like whenever I travel, like, whenever you travel abroad and someone doesn't understand you because you're not speaking the same language, a lot of people just talk louder. Donde está? It's like it's not that I can't hear you, I can't understand you. And I feel like that's like relationship. Why aren't you? And then people start clapping at each other. And it's like no. This isn't. We need to take a step back and try to get. It's not necessarily what I'm saying. It's how you're going to receive it. So I'm okay in my relationship if Tasha never perfectly understands my language as long as we both can learn how to translate for the other person to receive, it seems.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. It's like it's making sure that your partner is understanding that. And another thing, sometimes partners, they want to solve the problem right there and then. And there is that say of don't go to bed angry. Sometimes it's a good idea to go to bed angry because you get to sleep on it, and then the next day you are going to come back to, if you come back to it, but it's a good idea to come back and then talk in a calm manner. When we are flooded with emotions, we are not engaging the thinking part of the brain. We are acting by emotion only. So we need to take the time. Both partners, now very important, both partners need to be okay with taking the time, because otherwise you're just stonewalling and you're turning your back and saying, I don't want to talk to you. It's not that. Okay, this is not getting anywhere. Let's take some time. Let's revisit this later.
Yeah, just because what's the point of saying your piece if it's not received? Well, that's all great. And look, I love having these talks because I'm not by any means an expert in any of this, but I want to communicate well. I want happiness. I've had this with negative commenters on my channel where it's like, look, I don't want to block people, but I got to set my own boundaries, and I want to know why. And most times when I engage people, they find a nicer way to say things. There's this weird. The internet's a weird place, but I've yet to quit on it. I've yet to quit on strangers not being able to communicate well with each other. Maybe it's futile. I don't know. But the least we can do is learn how to share healthy ways to communicate with our loved ones. So anyway, I know you've been on my channel before. I know I always wonder if it's on a live stream or what. But come back anytime. And if there's ever any parts of The Bachelor or anything we discuss in our community that you want to elaborate on, I'd love to hear more about it. And then where can people find your information? Therapywithfranny.com. Do I have that right?
Yes, therapywithfranny.com. That's my website. And if they want to follow me on Instagram, it's Mother Nature Heals with a Z at the end. That's my hiking Instagram. That's like the weekend Franny.
Listen, we're going to be on your hiking Instagram soon. We have to get back into figure. The problem is you go on all these wild hikes that we've just been like, intimidated by. So we'll have to find a beginner hike, and we're going to be there. Okay.
Well, I'll be glad to do that. Thank you so much, Dave, for having me here. It's a pleasure. And count on me for anything.
Appreciate you as always. Everyone, go make sure to give Franny a follow on Instagram, and I'll talk to you later.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that was my conversation with Franny. What do you guys think? Make sure to follow her on Instagram and go give her some support. Love in the comment section. You're welcome back anytime. I hope everyone has a fantastic Friday evening. I'm going to get a large Diet Coke and party tonight, baby. All right, I'll talk to you all later. Bye, everybody.